Hello again. It is Crew Call presented by Flow Racing, the home of NASCAR roots. You can subscribe at www.flowracing.com. Steve Post, pit road reporter for Motor Racing Network, joined by 25-time winning crew chief in the Cup Series and a champion, 2018 championship winning crew chief. Todd Gordon is here. Hey, man, how are you?
I'm awesome.
What a wild one in Atlanta, huh?
Yeah. You couldn't. What a weekend! Racing all across the board, kicking off with the Truck Series at Mid Ohio. A great finish for Parker Klingerman and Zane Smith, putting on some really good racing and clean racing.
Yeah,
and then Austin Hill's win at Saturday in the Xfinity race, and then Chase Elliott brings home the hometown win on Sunday in a dominant car. They were phenomenal. My wife asked me about. Right at the end of stage 2, who wins this race? It's Chase Elliott. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
When it gets down to 3 to go, he just pulls out and passes.
Yeah, he could go wherever he wanted to.
Their ability was phenomenal.
It was unreal. It was so good. It really was. I do want to go back to that Truck Series because Charlie Henderson, that 75 team, and Chris Carrier up there. Chris has been around forever. And he just goes to the shop and makes his trucks better every week. Mm-hmm. We're going racing this week. We're not going racing this week. Wherever we're going. I'm going to the shop. I'm going to make the trucks better. I've got my band of racers, and we take the truck to the racetrack. Parker slides in, and I just thought it was a great win for a small team, that's for sure.
Got to talk to Parker Tuesday morning on the morning drive with Bagley, and just talk about how that whole organization works. Yeah. And Chris is really their only full-time employee. Now, they've got some really good people. Tom Clavette, who was my car chief when I was in the Xfinity Series at Penske, he's a weekend warrior with them. So, there's a few people up there that are really special. The story on that truck was really cool. That truck, they went someplace looking to buy a car or a truck from somebody who's closing down, and Carrier realized that was an old Turner truck that he had built.
Whoa!
He said, and Parker told me it's like a 9-year-old Turner road course truck that still is competitive today. So
it is. Yeah.
Really cool, the story behind that and that whole team and what they can do and showing up for races at places that they feel like they can compete. And obviously could here. They got 2 more left with Kansas and Bristol. And Parker's run in the front of Bristol quite a bit. And that's home track for those guys out of Abington.
Sure.
So really cool truck series.
Picking and choosing their battles.
Yeah.
I love when you see various strategies approaching things. We all want to be full-time. Well, maybe we all don't. A lot of the perceived goal out there is you want to be full-time Cup Series. There's people probably like Chris Carrier probably love where they're
you step back
from that. Exactly. So we're going to talk to Alan Gustafson here in a little bit, and later on we're going to talk to Drew Blickensderfer. So we'll save a lot of the Alan talk other than just kind of saying the last 3 races, that team is certainly on a roll. They seem to have got their footing.
Yes.
They really do. And you've got a road course, you've got an intermediate, which was a concrete intermediate, but it's an intermediate track, and you've got a super speedway-ish style track. So it seems like they've got their footing pretty good.
Yeah, they're back to that championship caliber run that you expect out of those guys, and really, they've led the points almost all year.
Yeah,
I mean, there's been discussion through the early summer that what's wrong with the 9 team, what's going on. There was even stupid questions about the chemistry pieces. I'm like, it's a new car. They're leading. They're leading the points. They've led the points all year. They would have won at California had they not had they'd have been in contention to win at California had they not had a jingle up with their teammate.
Right. Right. That's right. When Larson and they got together going down into turn 1. You're right.
Trying to pass him for the lead. So they've been pretty consistent, but they're on fire here lately. Really, they were the dominant car at the last 3 races, and then Tyler Reddick just pressured him into making mistakes and got it from him at Road America. But it'd be fun to talk to Alan about what's changed, because they went from pretty good to exceptional in the last month.
And that's really, really neat. I love watching exceptional. I love watching it, okay? You are Ryan Sparks. You're crew chief for Corey LaJoie. What's the message Monday morning when you walk back into that race shop?
Daytona's like 5 weeks away.
Yeah.
Really, you look at what these guys have done, and they top 5 at Atlanta in the first race there. Came back to Talladega, had a pretty solid run there, and now they go to Atlanta, and Ryan made a really, really gutsy call on doing the fuel only stop and timing it out to 3 point whatever it was seconds that they felt they needed, and that was counting on cautions to get them to the end, which they got. I mean, that's as a crew chief, he's got to walk away from that saying,
"Yeah,
I did it," because that's the call that got him up in position. But the really cool part from there is a lot of people can put themselves in position, but then it's the ability of having a good enough race car and a good enough race car driver, which they did, to fight once you get in that position. And he lost the lead, took it back from Chase.
Yeah.
I mean, side drafted Chase and slid up in front of him. And what a great story that was. And you do. I mean, if you're those guys, talk to Jeff Dickerson Friday, Monday night on a late shift. And it's about how do we get ourselves to the top 30 in points by the time we get to Daytona so that if we can capitalize like we almost did here, that we can take advantage of that.
Yeah, because you had a scenario where congratulations, you won, you're still not qualified.
Yeah, like I don't know, they're 31st in points.
They're somewhere in points.
And they've got a decent. I mean, it's 40 some points I think that they've got to make up.
A lot to make up.
It's tough to make that up, but
right.
That's
why you go do it.
You got to have a goal. You got There's 7 races left in the season. The 7th is the one. So in the next 6, figure out how to get there.
How do you get if you're 40 points away? How do you get 8 points each week?
And the other part is that I mean 30th in points is Brad Keselowski.
Yeah,
with a 100-point penalty, put him back that far. But even if you're 30 points back going into Daytona, that can be overcome.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, wrecks at Daytona can put somebody making no points.
Right.
So a win at Daytona Brad may not be in the top 20 at that point.
Right.
Depending on where. I mean, it's a wild card race. So
it is.
You can't give up on the season at any point. That's just what a great statement that is for the next gen car, for where NASCAR's brought the sport. That we can take a team like Spire, and they can focus on being successful at a particular style of racetrack and have success at it.
Well, I think that and once you get comfortable in that spot, you could say, "What's next?" We're really good. I think when you look, I think a step forward on that, and I've spent a lot of time, and we talked to Blake Harris a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. You had the 34 car when it's like, okay, they're super speedways. Well, wait a minute. Now, McDowell's a pretty good road racer. Well, what was Gateway? What was this? What was that? You've got, these are our A opportunities. Mm-hmm. These are our A- opportunities. Let's take the C and make it a B. And I think that's the beauty of it. And Inspire might be a step behind them. I'm not sure, but they've got some opportunities coming up. And how do you do that? And then how do you take that energy and momentum to New Hampshire this week, home track for the LaJoie family? Mm-hmm. I mean, Corey's lived his whole life here in North Carolina, but it's the home track for the family up there. And how do you take that and say, okay, we've got to look at this top 30. What do we do? Do we gain 8 points? Can we gain 10 points? Can we do this? I think it's great.
And seeing that ability to go ahead and run up front and doing it at Atlanta and knowing that there's an opportunity, that makes it where, to Ryan, there's a more urgency to go score points. So if there is a cycle on a stage, I'm going to go grab 5 points if I feel like I can strategize my way to 1 point. There'll be a lot of things that go on, but I really loved to even listen to Corey LaJoie after the race, talking about first time I've been up on the front row. First, I'm learning. He didn't talk about all the things that could have been. He talked about the opportunity he had. That I'm learning how to restart with these guys. I'm learning what I got to do on these things, and I'll be better at it next time I do it. So
Corey LaJoie post race gained. There's drivers, and I think we've all known Corey LaJoie is a very talented race car driver. The Super Shoe, he had so much success coming up through the ranks, and we know he's been slugging it out with underfunded teams. I think on the racetrack, I think he's well respected in the garage area as a young racer that's doing the right things. You rarely see him in dust-ups. Once in a while, he'll get a little bit out of line. Off the racetrack, the way he handled post-race off the racetrack, to me, if you're a team owner or you're a sponsor, you're sitting there maybe on the fence on something, man, there's a guy there. He's got a podcast. He's out there socially in the world. He's out there communicating with people, and he handled it with class. He didn't talk about the what ifs. He talked about the opportunity. And yes, I would drive it off in there again to win the race. I'd rather wreck going for the win than to ride around and finish 7th spot, to go to victory lane and to hang out with Chase and say Chase did everything right by blocking me. It's winning a race.
Yes.
He handled that so well.
Yeah, he definitely did. He definitely did. It was a great story. The weekend was phenomenal all the way through, from the truck race, the Xfinity race, to Cup race. What a great weekend of racing.
Great weekend of racing, that's for sure. So when we come back, we're going to talk to Alan Gustafson, and later in the program, we're going to talk to Drew Blickensderfer. They're going to join us on the hotline. Speaking of great racing, you can subscribe to Flow Racing, the home of NASCAR roots. Catch the NASCAR Wheel and Modifieds, the ARCA Menard Series, the Pinty Series, and NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Tour Racing, flowracing.com. We got a couple of headliners. One you might be really interested in, Todd. NASCAR Wheel and Modified. Oh, you might be interested in this one, too. NASCAR Wheel and Modifieds in New Hampshire. They always put on a show there.
That's the best show of the weekend.
It really is. That's Saturday night. NASCAR Pinty Series at Exhibition Place. But our buddy Jeff Striegel up at Berlin has the return of the Super Modifieds, including Johnny Benson Jr. to Berlin. You're a Super Modified guy. That is going to be a neat weekend of racing up there.
Definitely is. Those are really neat racing machines. And when you got that much tire and that much motor and not much weight, it's on a pretty exciting show.
It will. So they've got Friday and Saturday night racing. If you can go to Berlin in Martin, Michigan, go. But if not, Flow Racing. Weekly racing also on Flow. Autodrome, Granby, Jennerstown, Riverhead, South Boston, Langley, Bowman Gray, La Crosse Fairgrounds, Meridian, and Evergreen. Subscribe at www.flowracing.com. Stay with us. Alan Gustafson joins us in just a moment. Welcome back. It is Crew Call presented by Flow Racing, the home of NASCAR roots. You can subscribe today at www.flowracing.com. Right now, when we look at the NASCAR Cup Series, the team that everybody has their eye on, a strong last 3 races with 2 wins and a second-place finish, is Chase Elliott. That Napa team down in Atlanta. Crew Chief Alan Gustafson joins us from over at Hendrick Motorsports. Hello, Alan. How are you?
Great, fellas. How are y'all?
We are doing well. Alan, you've got to feel pretty good about your performance over the last couple of weeks here with that race team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been performing at a really high level, and certainly we're able to pay it off a couple of times at Nashville and Atlanta, and really close at Elkhart Lake. So, yeah, a lot of momentum. Team's doing great. Certainly always room to improve, but when you get results like that, that's pretty special.
What's changed to cause that? I mean, you guys, you've been the points leader almost all the season. I don't know. There may have been a race or two that you weren't early in the season, but you had speed. I mean, I thought you were really good at California to start the season. You had a little jingle up there, and you've been consistent. But all of a sudden, you've turned back into the championship favorite that we've seen you be in the last couple of years. What's changed the last month?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I feel like we really had some good opportunities throughout the year. We didn't capitalize on them. I feel like we've had the speed, but I just don't feel like we were closing races out the way we needed to close races out, and weren't taking advantage of those opportunities. And I think that's what's changed the last month or so, is we've gotten the results that where we ran or the performances that we've had through the race. We've closed those races out and got the results that I want to say not deserve is not really the right way to say it, but that we feel like we should have. So, yeah. And you know how it goes. Sometimes, man, you work just as hard at races and you feel like you have just as good a car and it just doesn't go your way. And Atlanta is a great example. I feel like we had a great car. I mean, obviously I have a biased opinion, but I feel like we had the best car there, but ultimately a lot of times it doesn't go your way. You end up getting crashed, or you end up having a pit strategy sequence go wrong, or something happens. And for us, that's all just been working.
Yeah. My wife asked me on stage 2, who wins the race? Chase Elliott. There's no doubt. The performance you guys had and the ability, I thought Chase ran a really good race in a lot of ways because he hung himself where he needed to be, but then he only showed it once he had to. When you got to 3 to go, you could just pull down and your car was incredible. The ability to just make moves and passes. I agree with you completely. The 100% the best car there. I think the next best car to you probably was the one before he had damage, but I don't think that he, it speaks for Team Chevrolet and where you guys are. Winning in Atlanta, that close to Chase's hometown, kind of hometown track to him. Was that any different than any of the other wins?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I guess I don't want to say you don't know, but going in there, I wasn't like, hey man, we gotta, this is a huge race. It's Chase's hometown. You're just focused on the different configuration and the track and, trying to understand, hey, ambient temperature is different. How can we improve from the spring and all those things? And then after we won the race, I think you could kind of see how special it was to him, which was really cool. And that was great. I mean, anytime that we can do something for him or help him do something that gets him excited or makes him feel good or, is special to him is really cool. So you could see after the race how special it was to him to win there and be able to share that with a lot of his friends and family and the fans that certainly adore him. So that was cool.
Neat stuff, that's for sure. We've had 2 races now, Alan, at the reconfigured Atlanta Motor Speedway. Compare and contrast. Is it Daytona-like? Is it Talladega-like? Is it unique? How does this now stack up in this super speedway world?
It's funny. I mean, I guess I'm going to answer your question a little different than what you asked. For me, like I have this contrasting feeling because I love the old track and what it brought. It was so fun to race on. It was so tough, and you wear tires out and you move lanes and really hard to get a hold of the track, and nobody's car really drove good, and you work through all those things that I loved. And I really thought I really do miss it. And I thought, man, this is going to be terrible. But to be honest with you, the racing's been really good at the new track at this hybrid kind of super speedway. It's certainly more entertaining for the fans. And that's exciting. Like, regardless of what you think or who you're pulling for, like the end of that race is just crazy exciting. So I think it's very unique. I think to specifically answer your question, I think it's very unique. It's not Daytona, it's not Talladega. It's a unique circumstance, and you have to look at it that way. But from where it was to where it is now it's crazy. The racing's really exciting, and it's a lot of fun.
It seems like the straightaways are too short for the guys to actually push each other, but there's a lot of speedway tendencies in drafting and pieces like that. How much of what you just had at Atlanta will kind of drive a little bit of your going back to Daytona at the end of the month? I mean, Daytona will be hot and slick then. Some of the handling should play there.
Yeah, I think a good bit. We actually, you through going through the experience of Atlanta the first time, we know it's different. So we tried different things that you really wouldn't have tried at a speedway race. And I felt like that opened up our eyes to some things. And then we looked at Talladega a little bit differently. Then we go back to Atlanta, same thing happens again. So, the car's really new, obviously. So we don't have a lot of data points, a lot of experience with it drafting, but each time we go, we've learned a good bit. And then I think really going to Atlanta again and the uniqueness of that has I won't say opened up our eyes, but giving you a little different perspective on things to do, or you could potentially do at Daytona. So I think it will influence it. Yeah.
7 races between now and the playoffs. Strengths, weaknesses, concerns. What do you need to see out of your team to gear up for that 10-race run for a potential championship?
Well, I mean, certainly, you have to have the consistent performances and the consistent speed. Like I mentioned, we need to continue to close out races. That's a big deal. Pit road's going to be a huge thing during the playoffs, in my opinion. And they're going to be a huge thing. You can't have the loose wheels. You can't have the penalties. You can't have, it's just going to be so tough. It's so hard to pass. I just don't feel like you can give up the track position and have those mistakes. So, focusing on all those things for us, we got to continue to have the consistency. We got to close out races. And certainly we got to make sure we get as rock solid as we can on pit road. So, operate at a really high level with very few mistakes, which is really tough to do with this configuration.
You talk about the consistency you've got to have. My approach to the playoffs used to be the first round was base hits, right? You didn't have to win anything. You just had to get yourself through it, not make major mistakes and take yourself out. Second round, you could almost do that, but you might have a little more urgency. By the third round, I felt like you had to win. Do you feel that's changed with the up and down nature of how inconsistent teams are with this car, of how you handle the 3 different rounds?
No, I agree with your evaluation. The only thing I would add to that is I think if you can get a big enough, I think two cars most likely, in my estimation, probably two cars are going to transfer out of that last round on points. And I think having that points buffer, the big differentiator to me is if you can have a big enough buffer in points, we've seen guys do it through the years, a big enough buffer in those bonus points, then you can transfer through that last round without winning. It's you're either going to win or you're going to go in there highly seeded and execute, 3 top 5 finishes, really, in my opinion.
Neat stuff, that's for sure. It all kicks off this weekend at New Hampshire, the Magic Mile. What's your expectations? What's on your crew chief checklist as you get ready to go this weekend at New Hampshire?
Everything. We are horrible in New Hampshire.
Oh, God.
Todd needs to help me out. Todd needs to send me over whatever he used to run there or something, because we are not good at that track. And it's a track that I like. I've had some success in the past, previously in my career, and we just have not found the right combination. So really working hard to do that, and we want to go up there and represent Napa and our partners well, and it's something we haven't been able to do recently.
Yeah, you talk about that place, and it's unique. The bumps into 3 are a challenge, especially with how NASCAR's got you guys travel limited in the back at this point, where you're probably going to be picking up the shocks in the back. It's one that we always just think about the splitter across those bumps. I got to think that the back of the car is your challenge now. I was talking with Scott Miller earlier in the week about whether they would PJ1 resin, what they would do, and even at that point, he didn't really have an answer for it. Said it's still developing. How does not knowing what the track's going to be treated like, how does that change your planning and your setups for the weekend?
Yeah, I mean that the PJ1, that's something that we've contribute to our struggles. Is I think that can mask a lot of things, and you can use that early in the race, and really I think it's a equalizer regardless if your car is great or not. If you have track position or some clean track, you can use that and make pretty good lap time and do okay. Where the good cars can turn off of it, can run lower, can pass, can turn off it and get a run, can get into the 3 like you described. So it does factor in, but I still feel like the guy who's going to have the best car is going to be able to run good laps off of it, or at least pull off of it earlier than others. Really off of 2, be able to turn down off of 2 and get a good run down the back. So it does factor in, but I think the best cars are going to be able to manage it without it.
Well, all kinds of variables, all kinds of challenges, and it gives us the radio a lot of fun things to watch, that's for sure. Alan, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us here today, and wish you continued success as the season rolls along.
Yeah, thanks. Always great to be on. Good to see you guys, and we'll see you in New Hampshire.
There we go. That is Alan Gustafson, crew chief over at Hendrick Motorsports. Stay with us. Drew Blickensderfer, he joins us next here on Crew Call. Welcome back to Crew Call, presented by Flow Racing, the home of NASCAR roots. You can subscribe at www.flowracing.com. Joining us from over at Stewart Haas Racing is Drew Blickensderfer, crew chief for Eric Almirola. Hello, Drew. Welcome back to Crew Call.
Hey, how are you guys doing today?
Good. Good to chat with you, Drew. As we look at the 2022 season, kind of assess where you guys are at with Eric in that 10 car.
I think we've done a decent job of trying to take advantage of certain racetracks. But in general, I think as a manufacturer and as a company, our cars aren't quite as fast as they need to be. We've had a couple opportunities. Gateway comes to mind of where we were kind of in the top 4 or 5 the entire weekend, practice, qualifying, race, things like that. So we've had a few opportunities, but you need more than a few opportunities. And we've kind of been on that cusp of making it on points right there at that range. And as the season winds down, I probably would have told you a month ago, I think you got to win, because it's going to get real tight here with the type of racetracks we have coming up leading into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about the success you guys had at Gateway, and really the Ford camp had success at Gateway. It seemed like, and you talk about the differences are there racetracks that you feel like lend themselves to, are there styles of racetracks that lead themselves to the Fords versus tracks that you struggle with as a manufacturer?
I was talking to your old driver, Joey, on pit road at Nashville. We all went to Gateway, battled for the win, battled for pole, and all of a sudden you go to Nashville thinking this is going to be another good one for us after past history. Similar style racetrack, right? Maybe mile and a quarter, kind of short tracky like, and we were all 10 spots worse. And it's like we couldn't put our finger on what caused that. Todd, that the thing that I think, we ran decent at Martinsville. The tracks we're shifting at seems to kind of lend to be a little better racetrack. So those oval tracks that we downshift at a lot, and we're coming up to another one here soon in Loudon that we'll be doing a lot of shifting. I think those seem to kind of play in our hand a little better than some of the bigger tracks where you just put it in fifth and leave it there.
So as you look forward, you brought up a little bit of Loudon, your driver's future winner there last year, and really has done well at some of these short tracks that we've got coming up. I think of him here at Loudon as being really strong. I think of him. He's had some ridiculously good runs at Richmond in the past, especially on long runs, being able to take care of it. And you talk about shifting. You got one here at Loudon that I think plays, and then you got one coming behind it that will have multiple shifts in it, right?
Yeah, we're looking forward to Loudon. Obviously, Eric won there. We ran well at Gateway. Briscoe won Phoenix. Our flat track program we feel is pretty good at Stewart-Haas. These are opportunities that definitely the 4 and the 10 are kind of got circled, saying we might be able to get a win here to help out ourselves. And then we tested for the organizational test for NASCAR at Pocono. So we felt we had really good speed at Pocono. The 20, the 99, and us were there. And obviously you can compare yourself kind of weekly now to a Trackhouse program, right? Like,
yeah,
it's every week in a week out. Those cars are so fast. So we were able to kind of judge ourselves off them. We feel real comfortable at Pocono. So yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them coming up, let alone Daytona, that we think we can get possibly into that win column.
Neat stuff, that's for sure. Drew, I love talking about the positives, the opportunities to do this, but when you're in a spot like this where you feel like as a manufacturer, as a company, you're still climbing out of a hole at places like Nashville, maybe Michigan coming up, where might be one of those tracks where you're like, man, we've struggled at this. What do you work on there? And is it feeling like maybe your hands are tied a little bit? But what types of things do you work on, knowing you're still trying to solve the riddle on those places?
Well, I think we're able to get so much data post race from years past, right, and other racetracks. So you would go to a similar racetrack you've run already this year. You go to Kansas and say, okay, does Kansas relate to Michigan, and how does it relate to Michigan, and where did we get beat? The Toyotas were basically 1 through 6 at Kansas. I mean, just dominant at Kansas. And where did they beat us at? Did they beat us at mid-corner speed? Did they beat us at the end of the straightaway? And then we go and talk about, okay, we need to fix this part of our program to try to get better there. So I think you take a cognitive approach and say, okay, the data post-race shows this is actually where you get beat. It's real easy while you're in the heat of the moment to say, our car doesn't come off the corner, or this doesn't happen, and our engines aren't running. And then you go back and look and say, well, they whooped you in the middle of the corner, where they're lifting less or doing whatever, right? Like, a lot of that plays into it. So you can go back and kind of break it down, and on Monday or Tuesday say, this is where we got beat. Next time we go back to a similar racetrack, hopefully we can work on that areas of your program. And like we talked about Trackhouse earlier, I think they're the only company week in and week out that hit it. It's kind of amazing. You see Joe Gibbs, Team Penske, Hendrick, Stewart-Haas, they have flashes of where it's like, okay, they got it. The next week, oh my gosh, what happened? And you haven't seen that out of Hendrick in 2 years, and you're seeing it this year. You haven't seen it out of Gibbs. You haven't seen it out of these big companies, but it's coming and going. And I think that's just the nature of the beast here with the next gen car.
And the come and go is week to week. It's not even month to month. It's the Toyotas went to, as you talked about, went to Kansas and run 1 through 6, and then they go to Sonoma and they're not on the map. Like,
that's right. It's a racetrack they're historically good at.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. It's crazy what the next gen car has done to how you approach racing. And in talking about that, how do you approach New Hampshire? I think of the things that I used to focus on, the bumps into turn 3. How's that going to affect this car? Shifting. That's something we didn't used to do. I would assume you're going to be shifting at New Hampshire now. And the traction compound, how does that work out?
Yeah, so like the bumps are a big thing, right? So I go back to Gateway. We keep referencing it. It's a very similar 3 and 4 at Gateway to the corners at New Hampshire. So the difference is, like you said, the bumps into 3, and the way we run our cars now, the way we are travel limited, things like that, it's going to be an extremely rough ride. And there's sacrifices that have to be made. You determine how high you want your car based off of bumps, and how stiff you want your springs to have to run that car at a certain height based off those bumps. So you're making sacrifices off of a Martinsville or a Gateway or another flat short track based off of really harsh bumps that are right kind of in the braking zone as you turn into turn 3 that can really affect the car. So that's a big factor. With 15 minutes of practice and not being able to change springs, you're like, man, my engineer and I last night, we stayed here quite a bit into the evening, and we had a smorgasbord of packages written on the dry erase board here in my office of, this one has the best aero, this one has the best grip, this one was probably the best over the bumps, and and by the way, you ran good at Gateway, so you don't want to vary far from that. And it's a whole bunch of sacrifices you have to make, and you hopefully pick the right one through the driver sim tool, your desktop sim tool, and all the references you have. But this car has presented a challenge, and I think that's why we see that week-to-week change of who's on top.
When you take a racetrack like New Hampshire that's in the Northeast, that has harsh winters, hot summers, how do you project what the bumps are going to be like? I mean, is that a variable? Do you have a good feel as to what the bumps are going to be like where it's gone, or is that a variable that you're going to roll into turn number 3 and learn a lot just on what the bumps are like?
Yeah, I think that's one variable. And Todd, you know this, like we've gone to Charlotte year after year and said like the bumps are better or worse, and I think a lot of times, Steve, it has to do with the sidewall of the tire they bring back, right? Like if they change the tire, which causes you to want to run a different air pressure or something to that. There's so many variables on how the cars change, the tires change, that maybe the bumps got worse. Maybe they didn't. It's just the way we run our cars now. Yeah. There's so many things that go on. Like we went to Las Vegas, completely concerned about the bumps going into turn 1 after California. I mean, we spun out twice in California, hitting a bump and bottom out in the limiter, and it loops around. We're like, oh my goodness, the bumps into turn 1 at Vegas historically are terrible. Eric goes out there and makes 5 laps and says, it's like they don't have bumps here. And it's just because we happen to, knock on wood, get things right the way the tire was and our setup and maybe the line they run differently changes so much from year to year because the sport's evolving. It's really hard to say if the tracetrack got worse or if there's something on the car that changed that you can't quite put your finger on it. And like I said, going there for 15 minutes of practice, you don't have much time. On Monday, you're kind of scratching your head saying, was that or wasn't that the case?
Yeah, at least the tire hasn't changed any from last year this year.
Oh, wait a minute, the tire.
Right.
There's that.
About this much of tire for sure, and about that much of width.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
It's only an inch and a half wider and an inch and a half shorter sidewall, right?
Listening to shows like this is why I'm glad I'm a radio guy. Oh my God!
So 7 months into the transition, coming to Stewart-Haas. Overall take, and what's been the biggest change for you from where you were?
Well, the biggest change is just the size of the place, the resources and the size. I hadn't been at a team like this size for a long time, and it's kind of funny. This place kind of prides itself on trying to make sure they're still agile enough as a big company to implement stuff they need to implement, which is nice. It's really nice. Haven't had this many teammates in a long time, so it's something different to get used to. There's 4 of us making decisions versus 1 or 2 of us making decisions, and I'm very lucky to have Tony Gibson, Greg Zippadelli, Rex Stump, the kind of the leadership role back here at the shop, let alone the other 3 peers I have that are really good human beings to be able to lean on. The transition's been easy. It feels kind of like after the where's my office and how do I get to, where do our cars set up at? And after you get that out of the way after a week or two, it's kind of, it feels good. It feels like home. People are very good here. Even above the Zippy and Gibson level of Tony Stewart and Gene Haas and Joe Custer and Brett Frew, those guys, it's a family environment here. They welcomed me with open arms, and it's been good. It's been really good. It's been fun trying to help Stewart Haas kind of get out of what we would call a slump. We need to win more races, and I think we're getting closer to kind of putting our finger on things that are going to help us do that. So it's been really enjoyable.
Final question for you. I'm listening to you name people from Tony Stewart to Gene Haas to Rex Stump to Tony Gibson to Greg Zippadelli. I know Mike Buckarach is over there. And I just sit there and say, racer, 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 racer. Some are Formula One, some are modified, some are ARCA cars from Florida.
There's a guy named Rodney Childers.
There's a guy named Rodney Childers who's a racer. Drew, there is just something about guys who race that's got to be fun going to work with those guys and going to battle with guys that are racers from the top down.
100%. And that's the kind of the MO around here. It's just be a racer, right? Like, be a racer. What's it going to do? And I think that's the next gen car is fun because it mixes all of that, right? There's a mix of everything. It's low light and left, and it's the guys in design, it's the guys in the air department. It's all of that getting mixed, and it's really good to be around people that understand it takes every part of that, right? Like you can't be so driven that everything's coming off a computer and not use your, racer mentality a little bit as well, right? Like there's a mix there that I think this place has the ability to have it both and have it both really well. One difference from the place I came to, you were just a racer, right? Because you didn't have some of the technical tools to be the other part of it. This place, the big organizations, they have the ability to be both. And that's what sets them apart, doing all the little things right. And, oh, by the way, having the technical ability to get a lot of the big things really, really well done. So, Stewart Haas, smoke, make sure from the top down. We're here to race, and we're going to be racers. And you see it week in and week out, the way we race each other. We race each other hard, and that's how Tony Stewart would have done it, and that's what he expects out of us. So, that message definitely is delivered.
If it's good enough for Smoke, it's good enough for me, that's for sure. Drew, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much. We wish you the best at New Hampshire and on throughout the balance of the season. We'll be following along here on Motor Racing Network, but thanks for joining us here on Crew Call.
No problem. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Todd.
There we go. Drew Blickensderfer joining us here on Crew Call. Stay with us. More in just a moment. Flow Racing. You can subscribe today at flowracing.com. Continuing on, Todd Gordon and Steve Post here. Todd, fascinating visits with Alan and with Drew. With all that you've heard from two great crew chiefs, what are you going to be watching this weekend in New Hampshire?
I want to sit right outside of turn 3. Or inside of turn 3. Maybe that's a better place.
Down in there.
I just, New Hampshire is such a cool little racetrack in that, it's flat. It's got a little bit of progression to it. You run up, you try to run down across the bottom. Exiting and shifting. That's Alan talked about. He talked about how the PJ1 or the resin kind of can mask a car, and we've been through that because there's times here that your car might be loose in, but you just drive in up on that grip and it masks it, and then as that goes away, your car gets worse during the race. Like
it's still the same.
Man, we were really good the first stage. Like it's so. The cars that are going to handle good there, they'll be able to do it without whatever grip there is, if there is grip. I don't know if they're going to spray the resin or what they're going to do, but it'll be pretty exciting. And kicks off the weekend, that modified show on Flow Racing.
Oh gosh,
that's one for the ages. I mean, they put restrictor plates on them. That's like Talladega Super Speedway racing on a 1 mile for modifieds. They push down the straightaways. It's almost like the Indy 500. They can pass every straightaway if they wanted to. So. That's a great one. You got to tune in to Flow Racing for that one. That's a great one of the weekend. But I look for a really exciting race, and we're coming down. We've only got Drew Blickensdurfer, 12th in points, second car out of the playoffs right now.
Second car out, 12th in points.
Yes. So what a great year it's been, and so much we're going to see in the next 7.
Sounds good. That's for sure. You talk about turn number 3 at New Hampshire. You'd like to sit there. That was where I did my MRN audition. Turn number 3 for a modified race.
Awesome.
Seemed to work out all right.
Yeah.
So turn number 3 at New Hampshire is a special spot. Hopefully the guy that gets through there the best this weekend is going to, getting through there this weekend is going to be important to get there. So it's going to be fun. That is for sure. We are so glad that you have joined us here. We appreciate Alan Gustafson and Drew Blickensderfer for joining us here on the program. But more important than all of that, thank you for joining us. For Todd Gordon, I'm Steve Post. Thanks again. This is Crew Call presented by Flow Racing, the home of NASCAR roots.